welcome then, everyone. Thank you for attending. This has been a little mini festival we've had the last couple of weeks, celebrating some of our recent publications, and we're finishing today with Miranda Miller's spectacular "When I Was," which I've got a copy of here, which if it's not blurry. We've got Miranda Miller herself here, and we've got Martin Goodman, writer, publisher, founder of Barbican Press. And with that, I'll hand over to Martin and Miranda.
Thanks, Mike. Hello, all, and hello, Miranda. It's lovely to get this chance to talk about this beautiful book, When I Was. It is a really sort of captivating story about a London childhood in the 1950s. I opened it up and realized that for me, this is one of those little modern classics, and it draws on, it's Miranda's ninth book, and you can see there's been a lot of practice gone into writing as clearly and as well and as beautifully as this. What I'd like to, because I know there's a secret about the cover here. The little girl tucked into the back is actually our author at an earlier age in her writing life. And this book has strong autobiographical elements. So I'd like you to tell us something, please, really, about the raw material for this book. What's fed into it?
Well, of all my novels, it's the only one that is autobiographical. I've generally spent my writing career trying not to write about myself directly and trying often to write about people like the artist Richard Dadd or the 18th century artist Angelica Kauffman, who had absolutely nothing in common with me, but yet I felt a deep empathy with them. In this case, the trigger for it was really a painting by my brother, the late Timothy Hyman, who in about 2003 did a painting called Painting the Family, which is a family portrait of my parents and three brothers. He is the artist, a rather sort of gnome-like figure in the corner, painting everybody. And all of us are present there as young adults, and my parents as middle-aged people. And when I first saw the painting, three of those people, my mother and my father and one of my brothers, were dead. And I just moved back to London, where I grew up, after living abroad and in Oxford for many years. And I found it really traumatizing. I mean, I felt that an enormous amount of memory was stored up in me and came out partly because I was living around the corner from a flat in St. John's Wood, where we'd all lived in the 1950s. And so I sat down and wrote a novel that was entirely autobiographical. And I abandoned the novel that I had been writing, which was a time slip Victorian novel called Nina in Utopia, and just wrote the family novel, which I called rather unoriginally Family Portrait. And at the end of about 2 years, I finished it and sent it to my ex-agent, who didn't like it. And so it then languished on my computer for many years until lockdown, when, like many people, I had a bit too much time on my hands. So, and I got a bit stuck. So I went back to this then old novel and reread it and felt that, partly because I'd changed and grown up, and I found myself thinking, well, when my parents were bringing us up, they were younger than I am now. So I had more sympathy for them, and I probably mellowed a bit. I also talked a lot to my two brothers. Tim was then alive, and my eldest brother, Nicky. I also dredged up many memories while there was still time, before old age set in and people started to forget, and rewrote it pretty entirely as a much shorter and I think more direct novel. But although I'd written about entirely different people, like the artist Richard Dadd in the first person, I found strangely that I couldn't write about myself in the first person. So it was a narrative. It was a novel, not an autobiography, which I don't think I could ever write, actually. I probably never will write one. So it's the closest thing that I'll ever write to a memoir of childhood. At the end of it, Viola is only 10. But I did attempt to see the points of view of all the other characters.
Yeah, we'll come on to that, because that's going to come onto that immediately after this reading, your first reading, because that really shows us the shifting into one of those other central characters and her point of view. So if you could read that first piece, please. It's from chapter 10, the beginning of chapter 10.
Yes, in this extract from chapter 10, Pauline is Viola's mother, and Viola is about 5 at this time. Colleen buys a very expensive sewing machine so that she can save money on the children's clothes. She and her friend Mary used to make their own clothes in India when they were young. She sets to work confidently and presents Alex with a pair of trousers he refuses to wear because one leg's shorter than the other. His uniform for the new school near Swiss Cottage cost a fortune, but Viola's school, fortunately, doesn't have a uniform. Colleen makes her a red corduroy pinafore dress with a lopsided hem, which Viola doesn't notice. She's anxious about going to school for the first time, so Colleen gives her a small teddy bear as a mascot and makes a little sailor suit for it. She tells Viola that as long as she holds on to the mascot, nothing bad will happen. One afternoon, as she's sewing in her bedroom and Viola's sitting on the floor looking at picture books, Colleen hears the telephone ring above the noise of the machine and abandons her sewing with relief. Mary, Colleen, I was thinking of you. I just had to phone. I was thinking of you too. Do you remember those dresses we made for the Colonel's ball? Hang on a minute, Viola. Viola, go and play in the nursery, will you please? I don't want to. But eventually, she goes. Colleen sits on the bed, dropping back happily into a younger self. How's the farm? Hard work, but we love it. Pete says he's so glad to be back in England. He's had enough of the army. Just think, Colleen, if you'd married your cousin Robin, I don't think I was cut out to be a farmer's wife. But I'm glad you're happy, she says politely, shuddering at the thought of cows and hens and bleak early mornings. If Robin had once seemed like Dickon in The Secret Garden, by the time Colleen was grown up, she thought of his farm as cold comfort farm and had no intention of experiencing something nasty in the woodshed. Still enjoying London? It's wonderful. Colleen couldn't resist boasting about their house, the children's expensive schools, and the parties she's been to. Mary listens for the invitation that never comes. Now we're back in London. Now we're back in England. I want to see you. I've missed you, Colleen. Why don't you all come to stay one weekend? Oh, it would be far too much of an invasion. No, it would be lovely. Come during the school holidays so that my children can get to know yours. And I want Morris and Pete to be friends. Now, I've got my diary out. Let's fix a date. But Colleen's still evasive, although she asks with genuine warmth about Mary's parents. Oh, they're fine. They've settled in a little bungalow 10 miles away, just outside York, so we can see a lot of them. They were so kind to me. They were very fond of you, Colleen. They'd love to see you. When Colleen and Mary were 10, Edie, in one of her many deathbed scenes, had asked Mary's parents to adopt her daughter, who'd been quite disappointed when her mother recovered. She felt safe in the affectionate atmosphere of Mary's home.
That's lovely. Thank you very much. It's there's lots of gorgeous moments in that. I chose that element, that passage as well, for the fact that we've got Viola, our main figure whose story we follow through the book, being asked to go off stage. Really, she's been sent to the nursery And then Colleen, the mother, carries on. So obviously, this is outside of beyond your capacity of remembering back into Viola's childhood from your own experience. So you're conjuring this family scene to existence, but it seems extraordinarily real, as it would from a novelist. So I just wonder, how did you sort of reach that decision to be able to go into the inner lives of each character? We've just seen the mother there relaxing into her younger self, and then we've seen the whole experience of herself and Mary and the little bitternesses and things that are going on. So just tell us something about that process.
Well, after my mother died, my brothers and I went to see a friend of hers who had grown up with her in India on various cantonments and had gone to Yorkshire and had run a farm with her husband. And she told us that she'd been very hurt because my mother never would actually visit her. They'd have these long conversations, and I would occasionally overhear part of them. They really had been like sisters growing up together. And this woman was still very fit. My mother was in very bad shape at the time she died, but this woman, Joan, was in excellent shape and very lucid. So we had long talks about it with her. So I did get this picture of how evasive my mother had been about her Anglo-Indian background. She just didn't have any reminders of it.
And I was trying to think, could I have conjured my mother's voice in dialogue? And I honestly don't know where I would begin to start. How did you do that, and how effective did you feel it was? Can you hear your mother when you're reading out her words?
I could hear both my parents in his head. Yes, I still can. Yes, after they've died.
Oh, you hear their voices still in your head?
Not literally as a hallucination, but yes, I can imagine their responses to things and what their opinions and prejudices were, and the fact that I don't actually like those opinions or prejudices, that doesn't make it any less vivid.
Yeah,
I can still pretty much predict what they would have thought about various friends' situations and so on.
I mean, here you are, remarkably, we're all there in the mid 2020s, and you're looking back to 1950s London. As you were writing, what was it that you wanted to conjure about London to give to the readers?
I really wanted to remind people who remember those times, or tell people who don't remember those times, just how much in many ways I think we have moved on. I mean, I think that prejudices about gender and sexuality and race were really much more prevalent then. And people would say what we'd now consider quite horrible things quite openly. And also girls were considered less important than boys. So their education didn't matter so much. And the assumption still was, as in a 19th century novel, that a girl was going to get married and she was going to be supported. And certainly my mother wouldn't have seen any other future for herself or for me.
Mm. And the book's written, I mean, presented chronologically. It starts in that lovely scene where Viola's sitting on the corner on a sofa while the family's gathered in a party around the television screen where the young Queen Elizabeth is being crowned. And then it moves forward through to the age of 10. But I wondered whether it was actually written chronologically, or did different elements come up to you at different times? Was there kind of a jigsaw method of the process of writing it? And did one incident then bring others to mind?
I have done that with some of my novels, Martin, but actually not with that one. That one didn't seem right to start then and finish with her visit to her beloved godmother, fairy godmother, as she calls her. She was 10. That was kind of the beginning of growing up.
So it wasn't some scenes from that childhood came to you and asked, write me now, even though I'm age 7, write me now, I don't want to wait.
No, it wasn't really like that. I mean, I just took each chapter really is based on a memory, except for the first one where I'd known that there had been this big party with a television that arrived with the coronation. I was 2 or 3, so I don't actually remember that, but I remember almost all the other scenes very vividly.
Yeah. And
And
you know,
but I
and
had to,
there's
sorry, I had to
there's a
finish.
whole web of kind of social discord that being seeded within that opening chapter as well, and all the different friends' affairs and the comings and goings and ups and downs of it all. Are they again family stories that you just
Oh
you
yes.
dramatized? Yeah.
Well, yes, all things that I read between the lines that were happening later.
Yeah.
You know, when I looked as an adult at my parents, obviously I picked up a lot of things that I didn't pick up at the time. So
Yeah.
there's a certain amount of hindsight going on.
And let's go now, please, to the next reading, which is from your chapter 23. So we're a little way into the book, and we're hearing about Viola and her sense of books and reading at that very early age.
Oh, I should mention that Viola, i.e. me, I was both extremely short-sighted as a child, and I was left-handed. And this is an example of practice in schools that I don't think happens anymore. I certainly hope not. Viola takes a pencil from the red leather pencil case she got for her birthday and strains to copy between the lines in her exercise book. The letters wobble and fall over backwards. Use your right hand, Viola. Miss Chamberlain advances to practice the theory she learned at teacher training college. Left-handedness is quite literally sinister, but it's a misfortune that can be cured. She hasn't yet resorted to tying Viola's left hand to the chair while she writes, although they've discussed this possibility in the staff room and agreed it would be good for her. Viola sneaks out her left hand again, while Miss Chamberlain turns away and completes the Y and G easily before the teacher turns back to her like grandmother's footsteps. What's a TIG, anyway? Know-it-all Jane, who has finished copying the whole calligraphy card in beautifully neat letters with no rubbing out, reads aloud, "Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forests of the night." Even through Jane's flat voice, the eyes and fire and nightmare forest glow thrillingly. The letters that lie squirming and mutilated on Viola's page leap in the air, brilliant and mysterious flames. There's magic in the squiggles on the board, heart-stopping excitement in the dirty smudges she has made in her exercise book. In her room, the books that her brothers have read and passed on stand in rows with their backs to her, keeping their secrets. She sits cross-legged on the floor under the window and slides out a big red book with a picture of a crowned elephant. Viola knows it's Baba. Mummy and the boys read it to her dozens of times when she was younger. But when she opens it and holds it up to her eyes, the words run away and hide. So she makes up her own story for the pictures, makes sense of the grey blur. She wants someone to come into the room and see that she's reading, more or less.
Okay, that's lovely. And it's a part of what is a strong theme within the book of Viola's sort of growing immersion into the stories that she is reading, and her willingness or eagerness and determinedness to have everybody engage in storytelling games. And I sense this as being part of the growing up of a writer. Did you now, as the kind of the Viola who'd grown up into Miranda with this as a nice novelist, did you take a particular delight in placing Viola inside a novel, this girl for whom novels were so big? So she's become a character in a novel now.
I didn't really think of it at the time that I was first writing this novel, because I was just I just felt I had to write it, and it definitely felt different from other novels I've written. It was more painful and more immersive. You know, I really was very driven as I wrote it.
And but that but that sense of having Viola now as a character in a novel, was that fun for you as well, to actually sort of place her inside a book? This girl who defined herself as books, and now she is just a creature of a book inside a book. She's in the cover.
It just seems natural. But I mean, looking at this photograph, can anyone see that? I don't know. That's me looking very sulky at a children's party at somewhere called the Hungaria restaurant in Regent Street, and that's my best friend, who is called Katie in the novel. So having yourself on the cover of your book is a sort of contortion of boxes within boxes, isn't it? But it did feel quite natural, and I was rather glad when you and Mike chose that photograph for the cover, because I couldn't really think what else you could put on it. And most of the photographs taken in our family were taken with a very clumsy Kodak box camera, and it looked dreadful now. You couldn't. This was taken by a professional photographer at the party, so it's quite a good photograph.
It's a good photograph. Could you read us the next part, which is moving on? We're moving Viola forward 5 chapters, and we're giving her a pair of glasses, and we're getting a beautiful, clear-eyed vision of a girl.
I was 8 when I got glasses, and before that, I was incredibly short-sighted. I assume that nowadays children's sight is automatically tested. I don't know. Mine wasn't anyway. Now that she has glasses, Viola finds the world more manageable. The squiggles on the blackboard are words and numbers. The confusion on cinema screens is a story. The television in the hall becomes a rich source of entertainment. Playground games are no longer menacing, and she can see the ball at netball. Best of all, she can remember faces and names. She suddenly makes a lot of friends at school. At home, she still lurks in the airing cupboard, reading, but also goes out on her bike or scooter to join a gang of children who live in the same block of flats, and run screaming through the coal cellars, trying to evade the uniformed porter who hates them. At school, Viola starts to enjoy lessons, and at the end of term, her report is enthusiastic. School teachers are one of the groups of people Colleen dislikes, particularly women who are only teaching because they can't get a husband. However, she's always pleased by her darling's success, although it is a pity Viola needs to wear those unfeminine glasses. They're blue plastic frames, usually patched together by elastoplast or sellotape, bounce up and down on her nose and stick out at the sides like an American car. The first time Viola sees herself in the mirror, she's devastated. Until now, she has had only the vaguest idea of how she looks. She knows she's tall and fat and dark, but because people have remarked on her eyes, she's always assumed they must be blue. Dolls, princesses, film stars, and girls in books always have blue eyes. It seems to be impossible to get on without them. Dolefully, she stares at herself in Colleen's triple dressing table mirror. It throws back 3 reflections: sallow skin, greasy dark brown hair, bulging dark eyes that look even more froggy behind the heavy glasses. Her tears redden her eyes and nose, ravage her muddy features like hot wax dripping down a candle. Colleen tries to comfort her. "You'll be very attractive when you grow up." "How do you know?" Viola wails. "I might just get fatter and fatter until I burst, or get so yellow I'll turn into a banana, or grow so fast I'll go through the ceiling. I'm never going to look at myself in the mirror again." Colleen knows about feeling ugly. She hugs her daughter tenderly and promises herself she will never destroy Viola's confidence by telling her, as her parents constantly told her while she was growing up, that she's too tall and gawky and looks like an old dish rag. In bed, when she's taken off her glasses and returned to her dreamy inner life, Viola sees herself as she really is, fair and slender, the smallest girl in the class. She darts around the playground, winning races, and is so popular that the entire school has a tug of war over her. Whenever she draws, it is this elfin figure who appears on the paper, doing ballet and gymnastics and leaping on and off horses. At school, she stares lugubriously at the girls who have stolen her true face and body, hardly able to speak to them for fear of the envy that will come boiling out.
Well done again. That's a gorgeous passage. For me, I mean, I also love the way that we suddenly slip briefly into sort of Colleen and her attitudes about the teacher, first of all, and then her driving back into her own history to try and protect her own child from the same thing. But I also love that clear-eyed view of a girl seeing herself up and using words like fat and gawky and tall and lanky and all of those, and the fears, and seeing that, I think is gorgeous. What I wonder is, I think sometimes about my own writing, is that much of my writing is about recovering my own childhood. And I wonder here, first of all, how do you feel now towards Viola? What are your feelings for this little girl?
Oh, well, I feel better than I did about her at the time.
Yeah.
Yes, I like her. You know, I think that's one of the ways that you do recover your childhood, isn't it? You see yourself being nice to this little girl who was once so unhappy about things that don't really seem important anymore.
I think it's really helpful for people as well to reflect back and see somebody being so open, because in a way you're giving that bravery that you've got as an adult into the childhood, and that articulacy, you know, so things that are there. I want to read just one passage, just one line here. It's just a couple of pages on from that. It's a line about the mother. Colleen's instinct to protect her children is so powerful that they dread it. And I think that's brilliant. But and very often you're giving this kind of flash of children's understanding, intuition of this, the parental dynamics and who's doing what and why, and you're being articulate about it. And that's a really big understanding that's been distilled into that one crisp sentence. Could you say, just, I don't know if you can, but could you say something about your process of distilling these sort of wild things into a sentence like that?
Well, as adolescents, I think all the children in my family felt that she was terribly possessive and judgmental about everything, particularly friends and lovers. And she did become a source of dread.
Yes.
She was always disapproving.
Right.
Later, you know, having been extremely supportive of us as children, but then when we didn't turn out to be the people she wanted, we reaped the whirlwind.
Right. There's a clear-eyed view of the father, Morris, as well, you know, who, you know, his moral code is, you know, doesn't tell you anything about cheating or lying, and doesn't know that's okay with him. No, you just have to read a lot of books, go to a good school, and speak well, and inherit a little money. And that's the moral code.
That was pretty much what he thought was an adequate life. Yes.
Yeah, but it's lovely distilling a parent into these sentences that are just so clear, and I enjoyed it. You know? And at the close, towards the close, Viola gets into a Rolls Royce and goes to with a friend in a sort of a kind of a giggly encounter to her friend's house for tea. The father's inviting people in. He's a rich guy, runs shoe manufacturing. Girls in the past have come away with shoes, but this guy is a sexual predator, and Viola doesn't get off lightly in the chapter. It comes near the close of the book. I'd like if you could say something about that. And I wonder, does it come near the close because that actually marks the end of childhood?
I think
When,
so any sort of sexual abuse does, in fact, mark the end of childhood whenever it happens. Yes, because I was totally ignorant, as is clear from the story, and quite convinced that this was my fault, that I was responsible in some way. And I hadn't written about this elsewhere, but over the course of my life, I've often talked to other friends and told them about this experience. And the thing that's really surprised me, Martin, is how many other people have had similar experiences. I mean, I think the sexual abuse of children in all its many different forms is incredibly common.
yeah, well,
And much really needs to be written about and spoken about a lot more than is.
yeah, it's clamped down on. I mean, it's meant to be even 1 in 6 boys, but I think a higher figure, probably 1 in 4 women have actually.
Well, possibly we never know because
Yeah,
many people do just keep it locked up
yeah,
inside. So it was a great relief to write about that because it had always puzzled me. I mean, I didn't actually invent anything about it. It was just so bizarre, the Rolls Royce and the shoes and
yeah, weird character.
sort of
Yeah,
getting his his the parents were divorced, but the father keeps inviting all these his daughter to bring all these little girls to tea.
yes.
Very sinister setup, isn't it? Very odd.
And then, of course, Viola, the mother of her friend comes around, and Viola is encouraged to tell what actually happened, and she's so scared of actually voicing it that she denies everything and goes quiet because she's feeling so much blame. So in a way, you're cleansing that by writing it into the story.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what did happen, and I wonder how often it happens because
Yeah.
it's frightening. You as a child, you don't know if you've done wrong or if someone's going to go to prison. It was a very scary situation altogether.
It's and obviously it's a trauma that you're dealing with the book. I like that the book it's not a traumatic book. This girl continues. It actually ends with a sort of a lovely scene that she has a friendship with this older lady called Charlotte, who's from sort of a different cast of person. Really, she's very understanding. They have a friendship that goes over the generations. And as I read that, I wonder. Do you think, this is a tricky question, do you think Viola could have imagined you into being as you are now?
No, absolutely not. I mean, for one thing, when you're 10 and you think of someone in their 70s, you think of them as being sort of either dead or extremely decrepit and not doing anything. I think at any point in my youth, I would not have imagined that at my age I would still be writing and swimming and doing a lot. So no, I think that's impossible. And I think also when you're a child, all adults, even people in their 20s or 30s, look rather ancient.
That's true. Yeah. So I do think that, I mean, one of our terms for this is being a portrait of an artist as a young girl, and a portrait of a writer as a young girl. And I think it's very interesting that you had your brother, whose posthumous work is in the Royal Academy show, a summer exhibition just now,
Yeah.
was revealing that in paint, and it's almost like, okay, fine, but I'm a writer, so I will reveal it in a book, which is then filled with these details and understanding and pictures of people and bringing the characters to life. So I think that's a lovely thing to do. You said you avoided dealing with your own life in fiction through the previous 8 books, and
none of them were anything like us directly. And the novel that I'm writing now, which is about a group of adolescents growing up in the 60s in London, has some autobiographical material, but I found I couldn't bear to write about my family again. So
as you were writing this, or as you read it after you'd written it, did you recognize that there are themes or characters or something in this book that were trying to burst out through the earlier ones?
Well, I think the fact that I was so short-sighted for so much of my life, it did actually have a profound influence on me. I think it made me more inclined to live in my inner life, and to daydream, and probably develop my imagination. So strangely enough, 2 years ago, I had a cataract operation, and instead of being short-sighted, I'm now long-sighted.
Right.
I think this has actually changed me and possibly changed my writing, because it's made me more aware of the outside world than I ever was before. So
Right.
that instead of quite easily and naturally disappearing inside my own head, I'm now a bit more aware of what's going on outside it.
Right.
I
That's interesting.
think, I mean, it's not exactly a disability to be very short-sighted, but it's close to one. You know,
I think it is one if it's not recognized and it's not corrected. Yes.
yes, yes. So
Especially if you're a girl that yearns to read and write, and but it all swims in front of you.
yes, that went on a long time, as you see. So I
Yeah.
was really late doing things like reading and writing.
Yeah. I was looking
Uh,
at I was looking at little films of myself in an early age recently, and suddenly, they're dead young, I'm suddenly appearing there in these big glasses, staring into my Beano. Suddenly, it's the same thing, really, in a way. Yeah.
Beano is still very popular with modern children. It's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. It probably would be with me if I bought one. Well, that's for me. It's a gorgeous book. There's a lot of wry humor, a lot of wonderful detail, great characters, lovely story. Viola's a girl that you really shoot for, and I'm glad you made it to now. and and I'd like to open it up to other people's questions. If you've got a question, if you'd like to ask it, please wave your hand at Mike. Are you able to see people, Mike, and then or Mike can read things that are already out in the chat. Over to you, Mike. You're our chat maestro.
Yeah, thank you for that, and thank you for the lovely readings, Miranda, as well. It was great to really hear you hear it come alive from within in your own voice, with it being so personal. I'd actually just like to start on that, actually, the question myself. In terms of the practical aspects of writing, it's you say it's the first time you tackled something that was personal. It's the closest to a memoir. I just wonder if the practical aspects of writing, of editing, of deciding to cut things out or getting feedback on that, did you find that harder with the material being closer to home, or was it any easier in any sense, or?
It's in a way it's the same, because you're still selecting. I
Mm.
mean, those aren't the only memories I have of childhood. So I chose the ones that seemed most vivid and alive, or in the case of the man with the shoes, the most bizarre. And as I said, in the second version, which is the version that you've just published, I cut out a lot. And I think the tone of it became more empathetic to other people, a bit less solipsistic than the first version.
Brilliant. And I guess that leads into a question we've got here from Margaret, who's says she's wondering about the proportions of fact and fictionalized events. Um, I guess with that, did you decide that certain things that you would embellish more, or did you think, no, I'll just leave this as it happened, how I remember it?
It's actually, Margaret, really genuinely written from what I remember feeling and seeing at the time. Yes, I would say each chapter genuinely started with a memory, and then I moved away or out from that memory to try and understand what was going on in the heads of the other people around me. And it's unique. I mean, amongst my novels, for that, I don't think I could do it again, and I certainly never did it before.
Did that? I wonder if that changed your sympathies and prejudices you might have had. I know you mentioned
I
at the
think it
start,
did.
you're seeing your parents a different now. Now that you're older and you've kind of been through it, you see what you would have perceived differently as a child to how they were seeing the world at the time. So
Oh
did
no,
that?
it did. It definitely. I mean, I'm a mother and a grandmother now, and that does change you. So yes, I think I had considerably more sympathy for my parents, but unfortunately, by then they'd been dead for about 20 years, so they never knew. But also, I don't know if I would have been able to write about them if they had been alive.
Mm.
that's a factor, I think, if you're writing about real people. And I probably one of the reasons I hesitated to write about my family again in the book I'm working on now is because it's some of those people are still alive, and that's a rather dubious kind of enterprise, I think.
Mm.
Right. And does that, I guess, when you're writing fiction, I suppose in a way you have a clear mindset of who you want the reader to sympathize with, or what kind of takeaways you want the reader to have. And I guess is that different when you're trying to represent something sort of honestly? Do you is a sense of taking a step back from that, of trying to get an opinion across and just sort of lay it out as it is, or does that
Well,
still come into it as a writer?
it was so close that I didn't have a very conscious idea of whether those characters were going to be sympathetic. And I think probably some people who read it, certainly my ex-agent, didn't find them sympathetic. And, there's also a whole sort of, it's really unfashionable to write about people from that background anyway, I think. If I'd made them a much poorer family, I think they would have automatically gained more sympathy. They're rather a spoilt and privileged family, and now we're told to check our privilege quite rightly. And also, I was pretty frank about the horrible prejudices my parents had about class and race and all kinds of things. So it just is the way it was. For me, it's totally unjudgmental in the sense that I'm just recording what I remember. Whereas I think if you're creating characters, you do think more of those things. You do think, oh, maybe I ought to make her a bit more feminist, or I might ought to make him a bit more sympathetic, or something like that.
Yeah, I like that aspect of it all. It's just this unfolding consciousness of a girl, seeing what's around, and the people are, and you're not trying to explain away those things, put it into context. We can see, all right, that's what the type of attitudes that this girl is going into. It's fine. I've said a number of times to people that my term of reference for this writing is Virginia Woolf, and what's your own take on Virginia Woolf? Do you think that if anyone says, "Oh wow, you could have written like Virginia Woolf," that you can accept that?
Very flattered.
Yeah.
I hugely admire her essays, particularly,
Yeah.
and certainly the way that she shows people's inner life and thoughts, I think, is extraordinary, and really did change the face of literature. Over to my right, I've got postcards of various writers I really admire staring down at me, and she's one of them.
Oh yeah. Who are the others?
The others are Dickens, Jane Austen, Dostoevsky, the three Bronte sisters, particularly Emily, and Keats, and a rather eccentric but brilliant novelist called John Cooper Powys.
Okay, right. He's the only other one of the 20th century, I think, isn't he? With Virginia Woolf.
Oh, that's true, actually. Yes, yeah. I've moved on in my taste. Actually, wonderful stories by Mavis Gallant, who I.
Oh yes, absolutely. Yes, yeah. Who I think also moves into people's consciousnesses quite well.
Very well, and it's about expatriate life, which I've had quite a lot of experience of. So I thought finding them terribly interesting.
Right.
Great. So they asked here in the chat, and actually part of this, I think you might want to add to this as well, Martin. First of all, Margaret's asked, did you change all the names of the characters? Yes, and did some people among your friends recognize themselves when they read it?
I did change all the names. Yes. I think that's sort of basic. But of course, you don't have to. I could have kept the same names. I wouldn't have been comfortable with that somehow.
Did you try to make them? Did you try to take away anything that might be recognizable to people, or did you just leave it as it is? Or
I didn't really censor it as I went along. No, I don't think I did. I did show it to one of my brothers who actually liked it, but this was my brother Tim, who Louise knew well, and who I was close to. And I actually said before the final version went through to you, I said, look, you can read it. If there's anything you find really offensive, I would change it. But he had a very great respect for other people's creativity, so he didn't want to change anything. But somebody else might have. I think if my parents had been there, the whole process would have been much more complicated.
I was wondering about your choice of the name Viola, rechristening yourself. And I was reading it today, and my dyslexia hit it, and I was reading it as voila, which I thought was quite nice. Here's the girl arriving, and it's also a viola, something which you can play.
No, it's Twelfth Night, and Miranda's the heroine of The Tempest, so I just go through Shakespearean names because me they're connected. And the main character in the novel I'm writing now is called Juliet. So,
all right, okay.
Shakespeare, basically.
Yeah.
And the other question there is just so how did it? And this is where I think Martin, you might have some insight as well. Is how did it come about that Barbican got this? Did you get another agent? Did you approach directly?
I don't have an agent at the moment. No, I had a long lunch with Martin, about 2 years ago now. Martin.
Yeah, probably.
Martin was like most publishers, telling me how awful it is being a publisher and how hard it all is. And I said, well, actually, I've written this novel. Would you like to read it? And so I sent it across to him, and he was very enthusiastic and generous about it. So it was a lovely surprise, really. Like, I'm not quite sure what else would have happened to it.
No, it's one of those things. I mean, really, how Barbican Press sort of works. It finds these books that belong on the shelves of world literature. They're really beautiful, classy books that sometimes they can't find their way through that morass of the commercial publishing world, but they have to be there. And I was determined not to publish this before I read it, and I opened it, and then was kind of enraptured. I was taken inside this glorious book. So it just. You sometimes read a book and you have to bring it into the world, and you read a book and you have to share it. And this was one of those, really. And so we're very proud. It's nice to have had a run of 3 Barbican first writers with their short debut books, and then Miranda coming with the ninth book, which is a wonderful career, still flowering so terrifically, and so that's just a great treat to be able to bring out such a book.
Well, I'm very grateful to you, and you, Mike, too. You did a great job.
Yeah, well, I'm glad Martin decided to pick it up. I'm glad you sent it to him, because it really was a pleasure to work on it, and to enjoy it as a reader, even. And it's out there in the world, and many people read it. I think that's all the questions we got from the chat. So there's just one thing I want to kind of end with, and it might be a bit of a tricky question, but maybe not. You talk about the prejudices that were there at the time, and you talked about the abuse, the mistreatment of girls, the undervaluing education and things like that. And I just wonder, because we're looking at 1950s there, and we're looking at what feels like a very long time ago, but in many ways, certain things like that are still prevalent today. There are still challenging attitudes. I just wonder what you would want the message to be for the reader. What should we take away? What lessons should we learn from that time and apply now?
Messages or lessons or anything. I honestly don't think like that. I don't think like that as a reader, really. But I think perhaps for younger readers, some of the attitudes to certainly race and gender might come as a surprise, but I'm not trying to teach anything.
Nice bit of escapism.
Well, thank you very much, Miranda. Thank you for all of those that are here with us during the live thing, and hello and welcome to everybody that's coming in to really appreciate Miranda's writing, reading in the YouTube eternity of the recording of this. And so, Miranda, would you like to just say goodbye?
Thank you so much, all of you who joined in this, and thanks to Mike and Martin at Barbican, and it's been a lot of fun. So many thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.